Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? I mean, everything that's happened this week has got something to do with AI. We literally are at just the cusp of something incredible. And I do believe, and what I want to discuss with the group here, if you guys also agree, that this AI boom is real, that companies are actually getting more productive. Employees are using this tool. The world is going to change. I just had an interview with Larry Goldberg, and he was saying that he still thinks this is very much like when the internet came out. We all thought it was going to happen that year, but actually it took several years before it actually impacted. I think this one's different. So let's talk about, obviously, NVIDIA came out with just across the board beats. And what's even more impressive is their forecast of what they're calling for the next quarter and next year is just crazy growth. Clearly, companies are buying the chips and trying to grow big time. We know everything that's happened about OpenAI over the weekend, and it's still happening right now. Minute by minute, we're hearing updates. This is a big battle. This is about AGI. This is about the safety of humanity. This is about, probably the largest company in the world. And then, of course, we got to talk about Tesla and its AI efforts and Elon being right in the center. Just a few seconds ago, Elon tweeted out this letter that he apparently received from the employees of OpenAI communicating to the board. So, but before we get there, let's get started with you, Jeff. Why don't you tell us the update of what happened to NVIDIA today?
I mean, they beat the top and bottom lines, and they also beat revenue guidance. They beat gross margins are at 75%. It's interesting. They guided a 0.5% lower, 74.5% on gross margins. And there's oohs and ahs from the crowd as NVIDIA reached peak gross margins. And, there's this whole call out regarding the China situation. They've broadcast, I mean, they literally put an 8K out about the China situation in October, like the day that they found out that there was a ban. And they said that they're going to more than offset, which is what I thought. As soon as the China thing came out, I thought of this in two pieces. One is they have way more demand than they have supply in all the other regions. So this is not, they're just literally someone else is going to move to the front of the line. This demand, they're not limited yet. The second thing I thought of is they're going to do workarounds. And I haven't listened to the whole call. Maybe someone else has listened to the call where they've discussed the workarounds, but there's rumors that they're pretty close on workarounds. And this is what silicon providers, this is what system level providers, they deal with all the time. They deal with it. This is a regulatory security issue. They deal with it for regulatory. They do this for, all kinds of issues, where you have to pull product and you've got to do redesign and you requalify it. My guess is they're going to have something ready pretty soon that'll have the workaround. So it'll just allow them to have that continued growth. But I mean, the call out in the earnings was, hey, there's a 25% of our data center revenue is tied to this China thing. But again, they're going to more than offset it. So I don't understand. I mean, whatever, this is like a 1.5%, the after hours is kind of all over the place. I mean, boy, if I had to guess where this trades tomorrow, I hate doing short-term guesses, but I don't know how this doesn't trade higher again. So that just so the numbers, they beat 3Q revenues, the 16.1 billion estimate, they beat it. They posted 18.1. I mean, this is huge. 15% beat there. They have $4.02 of earnings. They beat it by like 70 cents or something. They have Tesla annual earnings they do in a quarter, and their gross margins are 75%. Yeah, and then just the China call outs. That's kind of the summary.
Alexandra, what was your reaction to NVIDIA's numbers? And yeah, there's no one that's going to catch up, or people are saying that there's a lot of other competitors coming soon in the next year?
I don't think you can actually build the moat of NVIDIA that quickly. I mean, you do see the traditional chip makers, carving their way forward, but I don't think it's going to be that quick. This morning to prepare, I read the Piper Sandler report where he still has a price target at 620, which seems crazy when at beginning of the year we were at 200 for NVIDIA, but it just seems so credible. And their guidance for, was it 20 billion? For the fourth quarter would probably seal that. So I do see the stock still running. It's not something I do. I usually don't do short-term stock predictions, but NVIDIA seems just such an interesting player here and the in-demand company, waiting for obviously for H200, waiting for them to implement their 1 year cadence rather than what they're currently doing in 2 year installments. But other than that, I mean, I don't think China's going to hurt them. There is so much demand that I don't think that we're going to have a real slowdown for them.
Okay. And then Jeff, didn't you say that NVIDIA's earnings per share in one quarter is already larger than Tesla's? And then when you look at the revenue per quarter, it's just ridiculously, right? 6 billion, now it's at 18 billion. Now it's going to go up even higher than that. It's just unbelievable numbers here.
I was looking at EPS to be clear, so it's normalized by the share count. I didn't look at the net income, but yeah, I mean, they're putting up amazing numbers, amazing growth into the following year. So yeah, EMD has a solution they believe, they'll be shipping in Q2. I think everybody's, has something coming out, but the story that NVIDIA has to paint is, well, yeah, there's going to be other people, but the TAM of AI, processing chips isn't fixed. It's growing as the needs for it grow. So just like the story with EV adoption, it's a little bit different, but there'll be competitors coming in, but there's also going to be TAM growth as well as everything starts shifting in this direction. So I don't think the competition, I mean, you're talking the whole industry is massively constrained, well into next year. So there's no kind of demand issue near term. I heard today that the lead times are about 200 days, 30 weeks or so, which is like, it's really on the high end of silicon to have that kind of lead time. So, I mean, NVIDIA is in total control. That means if people want to get in line for NVIDIA silicon, if those lead times are true, like NVIDIA's got, they've got forward guidance 7 months out. And again, everybody puts in a forecast for the following year. It's kind of like a rough, cut plus or minus whatever percent. But when you've actually got to place orders 30 weeks out, you got to know what you're taking. And I'm sure NVIDIA is putting take or pays on a lot of people, which is whatever you order, you're taking, whether you needed it or not, you're taking it or you're paying us for it. So that's what I believe is happening. That's why I don't think the double ordering thing is a risk. Now, could people have been pulling forward demand of like, hey, I want 10,000 of these in Q1, but I'm going to order 20,000 so I get my real allocation? Yes. But like I said, with a take or pay, if they order the 20,000, they have to take the 20,000 if that supply is available. And if the supply is available and they decide they don't need 20,000, they need 10,000, well, then they're writing a check for the value of the other 10,000. That's what take or pay is. So I don't view double ordering as a risk with this when you're on global allocation, but I do think that there could be some pull forward risk. So that, that could be something that's out there too.
What's confusing to me is how is it that they were able to, in this quarter, have a $2 billion beat to an already aggressive, 16 billion estimate? They got 18 billion. So does that mean that they were able to produce more than they expected? Because the demand is way more. Yeah.
No, so Herbert, they have unbelievable visibility, like I said. So this is like when Tesla had, 6-month lead times for all of their cars. Tesla, was routinely beating quarters at that time because there was so much demand for the product relative to their production capacity. By the way, this is all relative to their production capacity. If they would have called this sooner, if their partners would have called it sooner, if NVIDIA would have called it sooner, they would have had more capacity at TSMC, and we wouldn't be, they'd still be printing massive quarters, but it wouldn't be, all this, suspense around it. But in general, what they do is they put guardrails around their sales plan. So they already know the next quarter. They already know they know a lot about the following quarter after that too. That's why they can speak with such confidence with their forward guidance. So they put parameters around sales, they put parameters around supply, and they put probabilities around those parameters. Think about left, right, center, goalpost, and they put probabilities around that, and that's how they forecast. And in general, they've been forecasting, on the conservative side and beating it.
Yeah. So if you look at their Q3, right, it's like $14.5 billion revenue came from the data center, and the gaming, which used to be their primary way to make money just a couple of years ago, it's pretty well the same, flat. And so, and then when you hear Microsoft saying that they're going to spend $50 billion in 2024, and then the same amount for the following years, this is a war. and it's a war of whoever has the most money. And so let's wrap it around and say, okay, what's NVIDIA going to do? But what's Tesla going to do? I expect Elon to need to raise money separately. I'm not saying that it has to be selling Tesla stock. He's got lots of friends, lots of connections, but don't you think that they will need to step up if they need, it's going to be the people with the biggest purse, the biggest data centers, the biggest chips and supercomputers. Any thoughts there?
Was that to me or was that
either of you guys? Whoever has an answer.
Well, I mean, I talked a lot, so I'm sure other people want to hear.
I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention.
Go ahead, Jeff, answer the question.
Are they going to have to raise? I mean, that's going to be obviously dependent on who's writing the checks for this server silicon. I mean, right now, this has been under the guide of Tesla writing these checks, for Dojo. And if XAI is using a portion of this, I don't know how the finances work, because you've got XAI, which is a separate company, but it looks like there's some connection to Twitter. You have Tesla AI. So maybe somebody else on here understands how that blue money is floating around. I don't know if they're gonna have to raise or not, but remember, they're gonna do a combination instead of right now, NVIDIA is taking, for every $3 spent on a GPU from a company, NVIDIA is taking $2 of those dollars. So this is why it behooves Tesla to design their own silicon, send it out for fab. Is TSMC going to make money? Of course they're going to make money on it, fabbing it out. But Tesla's not going to have to be just, for every $1 billion they're sending to NVIDIA, remember, they're making 75% gross margin. So they could, get 3 times the amount of silicon that they're getting for the price, basically. And they're going to be driving a bunch of efficiency gains in that next generation silicon. So they may be able to get, 6 times or 10 times the amount of compute power versus what they have to pay to NVIDIA. So that's why this has been such a priority for Tesla. So I don't know. The short answer is, I don't know if they're going to have to go out for additional capital or not. I just know that they're not going to turn the same crank that everyone else is turning, paying NVIDIA 75%. Now they are right now in the interim, but once they have their solution fully ramped up, I think they're going to cut over. And maybe they'll do maybe they'll still buy some from NVIDIA to keep that relationship going and to do comparative analysis and benchmarking. But in general, I think you'll see a larger percentage going to the D1 chip.
Okay, Larry, hey, do you want to join in a conversation? We can open it up to Tesla as well. With OpenAI and all the things happening this weekend, just so curious if where Elon is and what he's doing. There was a little thing that we all jumped on that when he saw that he started following Andre Carpathia again. So is there a chance that Andre, with the turmoil that's happening at OpenAI, might be available? Would Elon be trying to scoop up some of the OpenAI developers? Obviously, it's still a fluid situation, but I mean, this is war. Things are happening really fast. And I'm just curious what you guys think Elon and Tesla's role is and what they're trying to do. Larry, do you want to join in? Okay.
Well, while we're waiting for Larry, of course, Elon has his leads out all over Twitter. I'm sure they're calling each other. I don't think, may sound a little controversial. I think Tesla is viewed very favorably, especially for new hires. And I think they're getting great talent. And I think they built XAI with great talent. But that whole OpenAI situation, right now, those employees, for the most part, not all of them, but it seems like they're kind of moving in block fashion. And it seems like what's happened over the last couple of years is Sam, and I've been doing some reading. I read this GitHub thing as well. It looks like they've thinned out that group to like loyalists, to Sam and Greg. So it seems like they're going to follow Sam and Greg for the most part in a block back and forth. So I don't know how many people are quote unquote available, but there may be some people on the margins. And of course, obviously Karpathy would be amazing. But yeah, there could be some opportunities in this. Right now is a data, compute, and resource, constrained game. So data, compute, and then human resources, the people, so talent. So if there's anything Tesla could do, Elon could do to help with that talent bottleneck, I'm sure he and his team are all over it. Didn't hurt anybody that's come over like a confirmed hire yet.
Hey, Kristen, join in, and then I'm going to share this in breaking news with Elon and the OpenAI letter.
Oh, yeah, this is awesome. I wish I I did just join the space, but I love this topic just because I think, like all of us, our eyes have been glued to X as this has been unfolding with the OpenAI story. But I think a lot of you, I don't know if you guys touch up on it, the e-accelerationists, the effective altruists, and then there's like what is the doomers. So I think a lot, kind of what Jeff was saying is I think a lot of at Microsoft probably I think dedicated to Sam because I think they're e-accelerationists. And I think a lot of them weigh heavily, like ethically, how they feel about that and who they're going to go work for. But I mean, Tesla does get a lot of the good talent, and I know that they probably some of them would be considering it. I wouldn't doubt that the teams that Elon has are reaching out to see if people want to come over.
So when you guys would say, right, Elon is doomer, right? He's trying to say, let's warn what's happening. And then he just shared this letter that he said he received. This was a letter from the employees to the board of directors of OpenAI. And this is the employees who are basically saying, we are concerned about Sam and Brad and Greg, I mean, and then their list of concerns were about primarily the way that they treated the employees, that they fired a bunch of people because the attrition rate from 2018 to 2020 is 50%. And it's kind of the culture, it's like demand from researchers to delay reporting progress on specific secret research initiatives, Greg's use of discriminatory language against gender transitioning team member, Sam directing IT and operations staff to conduct investigations to employees, including Ilya, without the knowledge and consent of management, Sam's discreet yet routine exploitation of OpenAI's nonprofit resources for his personal goals. I don't know. When I read this, it's like, yeah, but I was thinking that it was going to be something bigger. This whole idea that why did they fire them unless they have proof or something? But yeah, I don't know. My first read of this letter, I'm not convinced that this is a big enough of a letter to fire Sam and Greg.
Well, I mean, yeah, it is. I think so.
I mean, we're talking about one of the most important companies, the most important inventions, the most important technology ever. And of course it matters how they handle, but you don't necessarily have to fire them for, I mean, dishonesty and manipulation, of course, that is critical. I'm just saying that I thought it was going to be bigger than this, right? Something really, unless I'm just really surveying it really quickly.
Yeah, no, there's a lot there. I mean, there's a lot there. I got to reread it again, but there's a lot there. Yeah, this whole thing I tweeted about. I mean, there's many things about this whole thing that to me are way off. I don't believe it. I think a bunch of stuff has been, and I've been in a C-level position before, obviously not at any of these companies, but I'm just kind of like sensing things like, I don't know of anybody I've ever worked for or with that's been called, for a CEO job. Let's go point one. Called for a CEO job on a Sunday afternoon and accepts on a Sunday afternoon with no prior discussions. I call BS on that. I believe that the board must have had something in the works for some period of time, and they must have had a board is supposed to have an active ready now list. If there's a sudden departure of a CEO, they're supposed to have an active ready now list of people to call. I've just never had it where you called somebody and they're like, yeah, I'll do it. And on a, call on a Sunday, cold call on a Sunday, accept on a Sunday, never heard of that. And, this whole thing of like, then this new CEO writes this letter and says, I can assure you it's not this, like, it's not these reasons why Sam was fired. Well, do you know or not? And sure enough, the answer is he didn't know. He just knew what he didn't know. He didn't know the reason. And I'm like, that's just so strange to me to come into a new job and say, well, what happened to the person before me? Oh, we're not, I mean, if it's a personal ethics or whatever, like, okay, they were whatever, then that happened and it's whatever. But like to not know even the category it's in and like what happened, really strange. And then to accept the job. So, I mean, something is strange.
Yeah, and I would like, oh, sorry, Gary, go ahead, because I actually wanted to call you. Go ahead, Larry.
I really had difficulty getting in and getting the mic to it, but I couldn't agree with you more, Jeff. Apart from a ready list, there's a common practice in the board, and it's called due deliberation. You don't do what they did to Sam, whatever he did or didn't do or may have been, whatever the concerns of employees were. There's a process. And the process is, typically a process that plays out over several days or weeks or even months. And when it plays out, you're ready for the process. You prepare the transition. Both sides agree. You speak to major clients. You speak to major vendors. You speak to major investors at the very least, particularly in a private company, which this is. But to take the actions that they took in such an ill-informed way gives one the feeling that the board is just not up to the task. And whatever Sam didn't do, was or wasn't, I think the board has demonstrated that they should step down, and that, particularly as it's a non-profit, and they should place this thing into some form of curatorship before it all vanishes, into thin air. And Microsoft, of course, is the big winner, but it's really bad. And could I add a few words that I was trying to get in about NVIDIA and the Tesla response to the NVIDIA growth?
Yeah, go for it.
So I just wanted to talk about the relationship of XAI, Tesla, and NVIDIA. On the NVIDIA call, I think Tesla was the second client they mentioned. Tesla and NVIDIA have a very close working relationship, and NVIDIA is very aware of Tesla's foray into silicon, and in some ways is even supportive of it. Obviously, it's a competitor, but the fact is that it's only to be expected. So there's a co-opetition environment there. But it's clear that Tesla is going to own the silicon, and XAI is going to be a client of that silicon. I say that just from the tea leaves I'm reading, but there's no way XAI could have had the compute power that they have available to them for this initial release in the time that it would take to build that infrastructure. Infrastructure of that caliber is not built overnight. It takes months, if not years. And the only, organization with that caliber of power is the only organizations with that caliber of power, the major vendors of compute power, AWS, Microsoft, etc., none of which would use. And the other one is Tesla. So I'm convinced that the relationship between XAI and Tesla is that Tesla is providing the silicon, that is providing the compute power, and XAI is a client of that compute power. So there's probably already an agreement. I'm guessing, of course, but there's probably already an agreement for the use of that power and for the future of that power. And it makes a whole lot of sense to me.
Right. But Jeff, weren't you the one that told me that XAI is the second largest purchaser of chips from NVIDIA?
I'm not sure of that. I don't think that was me, but they're buying a big chunk. Yeah. Not XAI, I would say, just the Tesla entity are buying a big chunk. I'm not sure.
Yeah. So XAI would not have been in the queue at the time of the H100 or H200 announcements, and so they would be very far down the queue.
Yeah, Tesla, it's one phone call, Larry. Elon just makes one phone call.
No, believe that.
No,
I don't believe that.
That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. The response would be, it makes no sense for XAI to put those chips in, because the engineering work, the engineering construct, the time to build the infrastructure. Infrastructure is not trivial. It is a huge challenge. And there are very few organizations in the world up to building those kinds of infrastructures. Very few. And Tesla is one of the few, and it's one of the leading organizations. So don't trivialize it. It is a huge challenge.
You got Oracle, you got Google, which, they're using mostly their tensor chips, but in terms of infrastructure fabs, it's really, Google, Microsoft, Oracle, Amazon, maybe you can even throw Facebook, into that, Meta into that. Yeah, there's very few organizations that have, because these are what people need to understand, these are the first Google supply chain was their network infrastructure supply chain. It wasn't a supply chain that's building pixels, obviously. And this is a whole team, this whole procurement team, program management, manufacturing, everything. And these are, what people don't realize, these are whole major operations inside of these companies.
But far beyond the supply chain, you've got the engineering. These things they're not little, Lego sets. They're extremely challenging engineering undertakings.
So my point is that listen, who's the real competitor here? It's Microsoft. They're spending $50 billion. Microsoft, and Elon was already warning about the fact that, read carefully the agreement. Microsoft controls the weights and the algorithms, and the way things fell together is like as if, don't tell me that Microsoft wasn't being in the back room, wasn't, told ahead of time. They purposely didn't want to be in the boardroom, the board members, because they wanted to stay arm's length, but really they controlled the whole thing. So now, OpenAI, the last 2 hours ago, Kara Swisher was reporting that there's fruitful negotiations taking place now between Sam and the board of OpenAI. So there's still a chance that they'll be there. But guess what? Now this reorg, it's going to be Microsoft's going to have 2 board members, and Satya already told Kara that's what he's going to ask for, so that he's not surprised. Sam will be back as CEO. It doesn't matter, right? Whichever scenario it is, Microsoft owns OpenAI. So my investment is with Tesla. I want to know, how does Elon, XAI, Tesla, how do they compete with a Microsoft with $50 billion of investment per year with the most advanced technology that's out there? You got Google and DeepMind, you got Microsoft, then you got Tesla. But Tesla needs to raise a ton of money. Now, I'm not warning that he's going to sell Tesla stock. I'm just saying that he has friends. He needs to go and think bigger. And I know he does, right? I'm not saying he doesn't, right? You know what I'm saying?
This may be the reason to raise capital. This may actually, remember, Larry, our discussion a couple of weeks ago?
Exactly.
And I tweeted that yesterday. I mean, while I'm really not in the need of anything just for ordinary CapEx spendings, but if this is the moment where you have to put the money on the table, raise 25 or 30 billion more.
Oh, I think more than 30 billion. I think the opportunity and the challenge is up to a $50 billion raise. That's what I think. And even if it depresses the stock price for a period of time, I think it's very well worth the money, because we're looking at, the eye on the prize here has to be, leadership in the world's future. And the opportunity is just so vast. And it's not just acquiring H200 chips. It is building the infrastructure. It is building the chip making capacity, working with all of the companies. I don't want to single out just TSMC, but I want to also point to, Samsung, and to build out the infrastructure to really scale this thing. And I think, Tesla has the opportunity. They certainly have the engineering talent to do it. And they can certainly dip into the engineering talent that falls out of this car wreck.
And I think one way of making it digestible to investors, and I agree with you, Larry, if you do a capital raise, may as well go to 50, is that Tesla takes a stake in XIA.
Exactly. And I'm so upset that Elon announced that employees get 25% of XAI shares. And I get why they're doing that, but what about
not employees, investors?
Investors, which is primarily Elon, and then the people who pushed forward, right, who carried over. But what about Tesla? Now, if he announces that Tesla shareholders get some share of X, we could then be seen quickly as an AI company, and then the story would change and so forth. Kristen, I'd love to get your opinion on that. XAI and Tesla shares.
That's a fair statement. I think it would help for Elon to clarify the relationship between Tesla and XAI. I think that would be very helpful. I think the fact that the ownership is common, but a commercial relationship, if clearly well spelled out, well documented, well governed relationship would be advantageous to all, particularly if Tesla is to raise the money for the infrastructure. The infrastructure is the key here. It's going to take an enormous amount of infrastructure to support both Tesla and XAI and X.
Sure, Larry, but the only entity that can stem this financially is Tesla. There is no doubt about it. So it has to be that Tesla does it, builds out Dojo, has all the heart, and the software, and then has agreements with the different entities. And I think by having a stake in EXA, it's going to make it digestible for the investors.
Exactly. You're right on top of it. And
Can I challenge that a bit?
Yeah.
Can I challenge that a bit? Like, I mean, what do you think the consumption rate is? Because I mean, they only have so many engineers and they only have so much data coming in. So I don't know where the bottlenecks stand today. I know we hear these one-liners here and there from Elon, but I don't know where the bottlenecks are today. And if they have to raise, like, why would you have a cash pile up front? I'm assuming you're talking about successive capital raises over a period of time.
Well, when they raise is not important, but if you want a reason why, I can give it to you. So if you look at Grok and you look at the take-up on Grok, as Grok reaches the levels that GPT-3 and particularly GPT 4.5 and GPT-5 have reached, the take-up is going to be phenomenal. I mean, I'm an investor in the company that I just retired from. And, I see the compute power that their AI is going to be chewing up. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, we're looking at exponential rates of use of this thing, literally exponential. I mean, the curve is so steep and the use is going to be so high that unless Grok can support that, GPT-4 or GPT-5 is going to, OpenAI is going to beat them to the punch. So they're going to have to build out ahead of usage. And then you get to FSD, the demand for training at FSD on a scale of, every country in the world, every different traffic pattern in the world and so on and so forth. So I think that the actual demand for compute power for infrastructure is limitless at this point, and it's limited only by the capital that we have to. And it's also going to have to be meted out very carefully to the most, economic use. That's my view.
Yeah, I like what Alexandra had to say earlier about exactly how the companies are going to work off each other. And I think we shouldn't forget that literally Grok is going to have access probably to those things. Like Elon's very efficient when he designs these companies to work and to feed off each other. So I don't know if compute is like all these cars. I don't think it's going to be as much as a problem as we think. Like the dojo itself is helping reiterate to make it stronger. So I mean, obviously, it's like a chip war between everybody trying to get the chips, but I think Tesla's way ahead of a lot of groups. And to see how far Grok has gotten in a short term compared to Chat GPT-4 is pretty amazing.
Absolutely. But the better it gets, the more demand is going to be for compute.
I guess what I'm thinking is that, okay, so first of all, this is no longer this whole open AI concept. Let's, have everybody have access to it so that everybody can share. This is now wars between private entities. And you have to be big, giant corporations. Only Google, Microsoft, hopefully Tesla is part of that. And then what's going to happen is there's going to be, each of these organizations is going to, you have to one up each other and get bigger and bigger than the others. So would Tesla partner with Oracle? Would Elon create some sort of new kind of a consortium? Because he needs to get big and he needs to get as big as the others. And I'm not sure at this point that Tesla is set up to be like Microsoft with their data center to be able to, you have to have the most compute in the world. So how do you do that? Like bigger than anybody else?
Well, you got to buy a lot of suit. You got to have a lot of engineers and you have a lot of infrastructure. And I think Tesla is incredibly well poised for that. Probably better poised than most. And your idea about some relationship with Oracle is not a bad one. So I think all of that points in the right direction. But, Elon is the master strategist because he's not thinking 2 years ahead or 3 years ahead. He's thinking 7 to 15 years ahead. And so I think he will see, what the future is. And we probably are way behind in seeing what he is seeing.
Yeah, I mean, so that's my point, right? Like, OpenAI just announced the ChatGPT voice. I did not realize this, but I found out that Sam Altman is actually a majority shareholder of that chip thing that you put on that pin that you put on your chest so that you can actually speak to the AI, to the chat, to AI, by voice. So yes, we have bots. Yes, we have cars, and we're going to have the ability to speak directly to these things, but that's not enough. You have to have something that every human has access to Grok and to control these things. And so there's going to be some escalation of the vision of what this is all about. And that requires a lot of money.
Yeah, I think
You're
that
singing my-
And we lost you, Kristen.
Oh, I was gonna say, I mean, that idea of the pin, I had thought of something about like that years ago, or just like the robot walking around and picking up so much of reading human behavior and the voice inflections and stuff like that. Like there's so much information that Elon's companies already have privy to. And like he said, like he put a wall up between the different AI companies who've been like skimming the information off Twitter when it was back 1.0, now it's X. But I mean, there's so many groups in different places that these AI companies have been skimming information. So of course, like the voice is the next level. And we know that smartphones can't. I mean, in the future, it's not going to just be this device in our hand anymore. And then there's Neuralink and ideas like that. So yeah, I mean, Elon can use all that stuff as well.
And he's probably using what we're talking about now on space.
Yeah, and the one thing that always astonishes me, because every day is something, right, is if you think, or if you try to think ahead, catching where Elon is with his plans, then you get suddenly pulled into the present, because the present is that X has still issues, X has now less ad revenue, X is having a important 2024 in front of them with, lots of political ads, lots of Olympic Games, whatever else is coming, and is making a lot of enemies. So you have these short-term tensions that keep him and us busy, and you have these medium and long-term goals for which I think he is optimal laying it out, but you have to still overcome these short-term hurdles all the time. It is a struggle. It's a struggle, I feel, for all of us. I mean, I'm not saying this is horrible to overcome, but we shouldn't just dismiss it because, every day has to be sorted out.
Okay, so
I killed the mood,
no,
Herbert. I'm
no,
sorry.
No, not at all. This is good. I mean, let's think positive. What could Elon do? So you saw that he followed Andre Carpathia again. What could that mean?
That's great. That's
right.
great.
At the very least, they're at least communicating again, right? And we've heard Elon say before, right? The way he had with the PayPal mafia, even the people that he felt backstabbed him, he always wants to, not burn the bridges, hoping that this might happen. I mean, is it zero chance, Jeff, zero chance that Sam and Elon could work together again? That's like, you told me no, zero, right?
I mean, it's pretty close, but you never say never. I just hope that they could pick up. I just think they have so much work to do on the bot. They have so much work to do on the assistant, for the car. Like there's so much work to do to pull all this together from a systems perspective, from an AI systems perspective. So I'm hoping they can pick up somebody like a Karpathy in there, but there's a lot of other talent out there too. I just like the bottlenecks. I think there's 4 bottlenecks to AI ramp, and it's the compute power, it's the data, it's the human talent, and it looks like it's going to be the electrical, input power. That's going to be the 4th one that's emerging as the compute power bottleneck is resolved. So I just hope on the resource side that they can continue to. I think they're probably doing a stellar job out of the universities. I just hope they can pick up some of this other talent because, again, working for an Elon company is different than working in some of the other companies in the Bay Area. And even an Elon company in the Bay Area, it's, he definitely has the various companies definitely have reputations in terms of, how you're going to work, put it that way. So, but yeah, I just hope, you can attract some really good, usually the people that want to do like amazing things and do groundbreaking things in AI are the people that want to work 120 hours a week. So as long as, there's alignment there, I think, Tesla can attract a lot of that talent.
And do you feel that if Andre comes back, he would rather be in XAI than in Tesla again?
Probably. I mean, I think he would say that he's grown that team on the Tesla side and that they've got V12 and, they're on this path. I think he's needed, quite frankly, to pull all these things together. Like, again, is there going to be an assistant in the car, kind of real-time natural language voice assistant in the car? Who's designing that? Who's designing the communication for the bot? And and do these things all get tied together somehow? How do the AI learnings tie together between all these systems? So yeah, as a higher level systems person, I think would be, an interesting thing. That's a thing. There's just a million things to go do.
What do people think about X becoming the app we need, as opposed to not even taking over the Tesla app, where we can do payments, we can talk, we can do everything. X becoming, the same sort of things they have in China. Do you think that's going to be a value, or will it bring value to X and also help Tesla? What do you think?
Larry, maybe you want to take this on. You're investing in X.
Right. I think there's the real opportunity for X to expand quite dramatically. Certainly, firstly, into payments, but ultimately into banking in general. Banking in general is what Elon originally created the first X for. X.com was originally meant to be a banking application. It became a payment application simply because they felt obliged to compete directly with PayPal, and they started a war with PayPal, which in the end nearly killed them both PayPal and X. And they merged, and the PayPal mafia felt very strongly that Elon's vision was not the right direction, and they eventually kicked Elon out. But I think he has a very clear vision for what X is going to become, and advertising really plays little or a relatively small part of that. It happens to be the income right now, or it used to be the income. So I think that there's a very real opportunity that X becomes a platform, an application platform that rivals, the App Store and the Google Store, the Play Store, and becomes, something real. Even though it is not an operating system for a phone, I think the opportunity is quite legitimate. So time will tell, but ability to produce products that people love is quite amazing. I think they're on their way. I think the issue with Elon's political tweeting is really getting in the way of X's growth path, because it is impacting the advertising revenue. And so there's going to be some hiccups. There have been some real hiccups. So time will tell, but I'm still pretty bullish on the company.
I don't think that's actually true, because Elon's a centrist. He's not right wing. He's not left wing. He's on the fence. And I agree. I think people want him to be, him to take sides, which he won't do. I think that's the problem. Everybody wants him to take a side. Everybody wants to be his mate. And he's trying to fix the planet. He's not trying to make friends.
Yeah, but that's not going to win him any friends or influence people. I think that's really the problem I'm talking about. That's where he wants to be. But because he's so strongly advocating his position, he's building enemies on both sides of that middle. And so that's really impacting the business. So that's the issue I think I'm talking about.
Okay. I want to change the topic a little bit, because I think, this is something that's happening so fast, the development of this AI, and some concern that it might already be near AGI, that, the time is of the essence. Money matters right now. So I read this incredible post, and I can't find it right now, but this is from a real AI expert. I mean, you can read his entire tweet was like just, technology terms that I couldn't understand. But the gist of what he was saying was that possibly the ChatGPT 5 is not only, being able to be so much more advanced than it is, but it has the ability to query itself and find answers to questions it doesn't know the answer to. So now you have an entity that can actually learn by itself. It's no longer this human puts a query and it answers back. It's now maybe a human starts a query, but this thing takes it on and starts answering questions it doesn't know the answer to. So when you have this entity that can do this, it can self-learn. It's the thing where it's getting closer and closer to, first of all, this thing will very quickly learn anything, everything. And I've been watching some of Ilya Sutskever's presentations recently, the TED Talk and others, and he's warning that very soon these entities will be able to, again, if it can learn anything, it's going to be better than you as a doctor, better than you as a lawyer, better than you in anything. So when whoever develops that first, it's like doesn't matter, because by that point it's too late. No other competing AI can catch up.
I don't agree with that, actually. I actually think one of the one of the things that may come out of this whole mess this weekend, on which I'm still suspicious how it was playing out. But one thing could be that there are actually now multiple more players, because these employees are going to go and spread. They're not going to just all migrate over to Microsoft if that is the end solution. So I think that could actually be a positive. The second thing I just want to add for the fun of it, ChatGPT is down and has been down for an hour. So you see, if you would have relied on that instead of your doctor, and it was your last hour, probably wouldn't have worked.
The thing with AI is it's only as good as the data set it's trained from. How big the big data sets that AI is trained from, it can't teach itself everything. It's impossible. The information going into computer is only as good as the input data that's put into it. It can choose. It's filtered. Basically, the computer works as a big filter. It looks at data, it filters it by how it's been taught, and that's how computers work.
Well, actually, large language models don't work like that. They work on the basis of the next likely word to be used in a sentence. So, when India says that it can learn anything, it can learn from itself. All it's doing is learning what the most likely next word is. I mean, so far, that's really the sum total of what LLMs do. And we've discovered that, that there are emergent properties from being able to do that, which indicate that it's something similar to how the brain works. So it's not quite what we think of in terms of, classical computer theory, where, we interrogate the data and we see relationships in the data and so on. So the idea of, the next most rational word to be used is really quite revolutionary and has created this revolution. So that changes a lot. And we've learned actually that there may be even deeper ideas of diffusion that we could use. But I have to give everybody, it's sort of a little bit of cold water here, that to date, we still haven't been able to figure out what's real and what's not real in the responses of, these large language models. And so they do hallucinate. And the problem is we don't know when they're hallucinating. And that's
I so agree,
really,
Larry. I so agree. The one thing is with vision. With vision, we see what's happening, right? We see Obi's video. We see when it regresses. We see when there's progress. These language models, I mean, it's all cute that it writes emails in a more elegant way than I would do it. But you're completely right. That is just all their weightings on these different words and having the probability on the next word that's going to follow and thereof. So this can go and get better and better, or it can, and I actually think this is, and you can see it with Grok, this is something at the current stage that can be copied in less than a year. How long was Grok on its way? 6 months, 8 months? And we're already better than 3.5, than ChatGPT 3.5. So I'm a little bit less enthusiastic on where we are now and think there's still time, especially on the language model side, and that the progress that Tesla is making on the cars and soon on the bots is much more impressive than anything that's done on the language side.
Everybody seems to think that AI is, intelligent. It's not actually intelligent. It's what we've taught it at present. If you think about your early Nokia phone, when you had the first spell check, your first suggestions that you used to have, when your word predictions, it was crap. And all this is a better version of that, and a more advanced version of that at present. It's not self-aware. It can't make decisions like we do. It isn't intuitive. It's only thinking. It's a model that's been taught, or an algorithm that's been taught. It's just not. It doesn't have the institutional knowledge that we come as humans.
I don't think that's true, because I know that, it's now teaching itself, right? Number one, it's learning on its own. There's no.
I'll say, and I think we have, Trevor, keep me honest, but I think we have a time check coming up here. This is all quantifiable, I think. So back to what Alexander and Herbert and Larry were talking about. Sorry, this is quantifiable. Like with vision, we know disengagements. We know when the controls go from the system to the human, they go manual, and all those things are measurable. So I don't know why there aren't measurable data sets that talk to the accuracy of GPT-4 and how accurate these things are. They're not being measured because, at least right now, the consequence of error is less than vision in a vehicle where someone could get hurt. But to me, there's no reason to not. I believe that they actually have metrics; they're just not publicized. But it's interesting thought process. Herbert, on time, I
Okay.
thought we were
Yeah.
cutting over
We're-
to a video version.
Yeah.
It would
We're-
keep me honest.
No, you're right. You're right. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate this. We're going to do a,
Herbert,
yeah. Can you not hear me? Yeah. We're going to do a Cyber Bulls episode that we're going to.
Alexandra, wasn't your understanding that we were cutting?
He is. Do you hear me? Because I think you can't hear Herbert. Herbert is wrapping
Sorry.
it up right now.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. I can't hear.
Okay. Thank you, guys, everybody. We're going to release another Cyber Bulls episode tomorrow. This time, we're going to talk about if the economy and Tesla is heading into a boom market. Are we headed in that direction? What will happen to Tesla? Thanks, everybody.